Stay focused on this camera right here too. This one right here in the middle.
And action. We're here today with Bass Reeves, an American hero. It has been said that he was also depicted as the Lone Ranger, but that has not been verified. Nevertheless, he was the first black lawman west of the Mississippi. Mr. Reeves, tell us a little bit about your early childhood life.
As the first black U.S. deputy marshal west of the Mississippi. I just wanted to correct you on that. They had a bunch of black lawmen, but not too many black U.S. deputy marshals, which is a federal appointment. I was born in 1838 in Crawford County, Arkansas. Born as a slave. My family was owned by William Reeves. We spent most of the time on his plantation until the war began, the war between the states. I actually went to war with William Reeves and worked as his, history shows that I worked as his bodyguard or his servant, but I carried a gun because I was probably the best shot in that whole outfit. After the war, or no, before the war, I actually fought in Chickamauga, but after the war, I actually ran away before Lee surrendered. Went to the Oklahoma Territory and stayed there. There I lived with the 5 civilized tribes, as they call them, civilized tribes because they were able to own slaves, but we were never treated like slaves in the civilized tribe. I stayed there until after the war was over.
Now, Ms. Reeves, now you've gone way further. Let's go back a little bit. I know you're ready to tell us about all of your famous exploits in the West as a lawman. First of all, when you were owned by William's father at first, correct?
That's correct.
And then he kind of was passed on to his son?
That's correct.
Now, did you and the son get along, or did you end up, you said you ran. Why did you run?
Well, we were sitting around playing cards like most men do after a long day, and we got into an argument. So after the fight, I thought it was best that I left his company, and that's when I ran to the Indian Territory.
Did you win the fight?
You can go ahead with the next question.
Oh, okay. When you went and ran to the Seminoles, it is said that you were illiterate, but you learned how many different languages?
I picked up at least 5 of the Native American dialect, and no, I could not read. Never learned to read.
So, family life. Did you ever meet a woman after you ran, or how did that come about?
I met Jenny after we came back from the Indian Territory. I met her and we married. We had 11 children, 5 boys, 5 girls. Actually, it was 6 boys and 5 girls.
You forgot one of your kids. They're going to be mad about that. Well, let me ask you this. With all those kids, how did you have a chance to go around chasing outlaws?
Now, this was before I became a U.S. Deputy Marshal. I actually owned land, farmed land, I owned ranch. And with all those children, everybody had a job to do. Milking cows, planting seeds during the time that the season, planting time. We learned to hunt and live off the land. But that was before I became a U.S. Deputy Marshal.
How did you become a U.S. Deputy Marshal? It was said that there was a hanging judge who needed your services.
Judge Parker, he found out that I had done some tracking for the U.S. military, and he knew that I knew the Indian Territory. And you got to remember, back then, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and parts of Texas, this is where all the bad guys went when they wanted to get away from the local law. But Oklahoma was also known as the Badlands. So he found out that I did some tracking, and he found out that I was good at what I did. So he asked me to come meet with him, and I did.
Being good at what you did, were you ever shot?
The 32 years I worked as a U.S. Marshal in the city police, shot it a few times. The only time I got shot was my hat.
Wow. Now, it said legend has it, you arrested some 3,000 outlaws?
At least.
Different colors? Because
anybody I had a warrant on, he got arrested.
Well, legend has it that you also arrested a family member too, right?
I did. I arrested my oldest son, Benny. Benny in a drunken stupor got in an argument with his wife, and he killed his wife. Judge Parker issued a warrant on him. I didn't know about all of this until I got back from one of my manhunt, and the warrant was laying on Judge Parker's desk. Apparently, none of the other deputies wanted to go get him because they knew that he was my son. I picked up the warrant. I asked Judge to sign that warrant to me, and I went looking.
It was said later your son, though, was pardoned, and he lived a pretty successful life after that.
He did. He lived, actually, he got sentenced to life in prison, but he only had to serve 11 years, and it was pardoned. After that, he turned out to be a pretty good boy.
And so for you, how did it end for you after arresting all of those outlaws? It was said that you became a police officer.
In the time that Oklahoma became part of the Union, and that was in 1907, they kind of disbanded all the U.S. marshals and opted out to get local police. So when I retired, I went to work for the Muskogee Police Department in Muskogee, Oklahoma.
So looking back on your career, how would you sum it up?
I would sum it up as being one of the things that I enjoy most, one of those things that I could take care of my family with, and one of those things that I did the job because it was my job to do, and I was asked to do it. I did it with honor, did it with pride.
Anything you would change?
No, wouldn't change anything. It was an unfortunate time for me to have to arrest my son, but the law is the law, and no matter who is responsible for breaking it, my purpose was to go out, bring that person in so they could stand trial.
Can you ask him about how did he escape his slave owner?
Well, he had a fight. His slave owner, he talked about that. So your slave owner, you said you had a fight with him in a card game, and it said you killed him, but you said, you won't comment on it.
No, he wasn't killed.
He wasn't killed. He didn't come looking for you? He wasn't mad at you?
He couldn't find me.
Because you were where?
Indian Territory.
Wow.
Anything else you want to ask?
Anything else you want to add?
No, you have the question.
No, I'm out of questions. I've pretty much heard everything that I can hear. I would like to know more about your experience as a slave and fighting the Confederate. You fought on the wrong side. Or did you know what you was doing, or you just following your manservant?
Didn't fight on the wrong side. I fought on the losing side, and that's of course a different story. In the day, you did what you needed to do to survive, and if it calls for me being a slave, and I needed to survive, that's what I did. It listed me as being a manservant, and they do that because in reality, they didn't want to show that anybody of color fought on the southern side, and that's not necessarily true. You tell me what a man slave is, what a valet is, and what as they in some parts is listed as a bodyguard. You tell me what that person is and what kind of responsibility that person has.
Well, and back then, I would say that you were probably 1/5 of a man, so you was probably no better than an animal going around on the leash.
That's not necessarily true. It was 1/5 of a man because that's the way the government looked at it. However, for that family, I actually fed them through my hunting, and that's how I become so proficient with a rifle. I did the hunting, brought the food in, and actually fed them. But like I said, I did what I needed to do to survive.
Okay, can you give me an ending?
Well, in reality, and that's what we're doing here today, is not to give Bass Reeves an ending. Television.
Outro, I mean an outro. An outro, just say.
Well, if I was you, let's talk about being a lawman and people being lawmen today, and how police act today. If we could kind of tie that again, or you want to go that deep in it? Okay, then.
Go sit down.
All right, so just go ahead and just end it and say, hey, like something, hey, this is Bass Reeves, and I thank you for watching this video during Black History Month. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope I made us proud as an African American, something like that.
There's a lot of untold stories about blacks in America. A lot of stories that have been told are not necessarily true. That's why we should stop and we should read about what actually went on, as much information as we can find, but it's also encouragement to you as a young person to go out, find out about who we are, where we come from and what we did. And you have to do that through research. By saying what we did, it's not going to make it. By showing what we did, it will make it. And in reality, they told a story about the Long Ranger, which started back, I think, in 1938. It's when they did the radio part about the Long Ranger. The Long Ranger was a story about this guy on the white horse and had this Indian as a companion. In reality, most of the stories that the Lone Ranger did was about Bass Reeves.
Did you have a companion?
I had a companion. His name was Grant Johnson, though. And Grant Johnson was a black man, not a Native American. They gave the companion on the TV program the name of Tonto, and it's to my understanding the Spanish word Tonto means stupid or fool. Now, how would you like to be called stupid? Hey, Tonto. Yeah, kimosabe.
What did kimosabe mean? It was something derogatory as well.
It was.
Did you have a white horse?
Yeah, in real life, as Bass Reeves, I had a white horse. And again, a horse is a good companion. It's kind of like a dog. You have a dog that's a companion. That dog's going to take care of you. He's going to hunt for you. He's going to be by your side. He's going to protect you. Well, my horse, my stallion was the same way.
And Lone Ranger has this white stallion that stands up and he said, "Hi-oh, silver away." Is that an image that you could see yourself when they told his story, which was based on your life?
No. So again, that's all theatrics.
But you did have a white stallion, beautiful. All right. So are you the real Lone Ranger?
I'm the real Bass Reeves. Lone Ranger was a fictional character.
But you lived that life.
I lived that life. But tell you about Lone Ranger, how good Bass Reeves. Tell you how good this guy was. Most of the time, he and Grant Johnson actually went out and sought out. And I'll show you a likeness of Grant Johnson here in a few. But they actually went out. Like I said, Bass Reeves could not read. I couldn't find information where he couldn't write. So you make the assumption that if he couldn't read, he couldn't write. I don't know if that's necessarily true. But Judge Parker would give him warrants, sometimes 12 and 13 at a time. And the Oklahoma Territory was vast area. I think that whole Indian Territory was about 7,500 square miles, which made it big. As big as Oklahoma is now, including Texas and Arkansas. So that was a large area. He'd give them a stack of warrants and he said, "These are the people who we want you to go out and arrest." Now here's the catch. Bass Reeves couldn't read, so he had someone to read off the name of the person that's wanted. When they read off the name of the person that's wanted, Bass Reeves looked at the warrant, memorized the warrant, put it down. And again, 12 and 13 warrants at a time. And he would memorize all of them. He would get on his horse, he'd find Tonto, Grant Johnson, and they'd go out looking for these individuals. Now, being a tracker, he knew what signs to look for. He knew enough about the backgrounds of the individuals that he knew how to track it. And who could imagine a guy, a black guy, coming at you to arrest you? This is what Bass Reeves is about. He one time dressed up as a woman, put on the pioneer dress, and walked out, looked around, talked around, and found the person they were looking for. Took that individual into custody.
So he was really wearing disguises, wow. So you wear disguises? He was that far much of a detective and that much into his role.
He knew what to look for. He knew how to.
You see, sometime after P. Ridge.
He knew how to put together cases.
Go back with that quick.
Yeah. So essentially, I forgot what I just asked. But he wore a lot of different disguises, so that was impressive. So I could say even innovative for someone back that time doing